Hi folks, and welcome to my allotment, where today we're going to be talking about self-watering systems. I use three main kind of watering systems on my plot, and I'm not talking about irrigation, which is the sort of thing where you might lay pipe work into the ground and have it kind of dripping. We're talking about mainly self-watering pots today. So I'm going to be talking about products called the Chilligrow, the Quadgrow, and the Autopot system. You might have seen these on YouTube, they're all the rage, and there's all sorts to be aware of, and I get asked all the time which one I recommend for people, so I thought it was finally time to make a video dedicated to it. Now you can see in my polytunnel here, I use lots of different methods. So we've got tomatoes growing in the ground, we've got chili peppers just in normal pots. I don't know what you'd call this as opposed to a self-watering pot. It's like an acoustic pot, zero technology, you know, you just use the watering can. At the end here, we've got the Chilligrow, which, as you can see, has some pretty healthy looking peppers in it. We've got 3 pots and a reservoir at the bottom there. This is filled with water, and then there's wicking matting that goes down into it. And then this side of the polytunnel, we've got 6 plants in Autopots, 6 chili plants in Autopots, and as well in the greenhouse out here, I have a Quadgrow system where there's 4 plants in here, and very similar to the Chilligrow, it's got a little reservoir underneath. And you fill this with water, and it's shared between these 2 pretty chunky reservoirs. So if you want to know a bit more about how to set up those systems, I won't go over that today. There are links in the description to set up videos for the Quadgrow and the Autopots. The Chilligrow is basically the same as the Quadgrow, so we don't need to spend too much time on that. So we'll start chatting a little bit about the Autopots. Now, just in terms of how this works, I've got a bin at the back, basically full of water. Looks like like an office bin, and you fill that with water, and then each of these pots have like a tray that they sit in, and you plumb the pipe work to each of the trays, and there's a little special valve inside. Like I say, view the setup video if you want to see it in detail, and then the pots sit in this little tray. Now, Autopots were a revelation for me. This is my 2nd year of using them, and I have never had chili crops like it. They have been absolutely fantastic. So the first pro is just the sheer amount of crops that you can get. The other thing I've noticed with my chili peppers is the pod size. So these are 15-litre pots. This is a very large pot. This is a lot of compost. And I think because of that, you get these gigantic pods. Here's a couple I just picked. This is a Champion from the Autopots, and this is one just grown in a normal 7.5-litre pot. These are different chilies, obviously, but they get to similar sizes. And for something like chili peppers, larger pod sizes are just fantastic because they cut down the amount of time that you spend harvesting. It's just wonderful. And the other thing about the Autopots is they're very, very modular. So you have so many different options, potentially too many different options for the products on offer. You get duo trays, single trays, there's a seedling tray. There's just so many different products. You get different size bins, different size pipes. For me, that's a positive because you can tailor make your own Autopot system for whatever growing space you've got, whether it's a small greenhouse, whether it's a massive greenhouse. One of the things I've done here by mistake is put too many plants in too small an area. Everyone who has an allotment or garden has done that before. Next year, I definitely need to space these out much more. One of the cons is that you do need to plumb these in. So for me to reorganize that, I'm going to have to probably buy some more pipe in and cut it to size. It's very, very simple and very easy, but it is something you don't have to worry about with the other systems. They do as well have loads of cool kind of add-on products. So something I tried out for the first time this year is their divider system. So you turn one of these pots into 4 different pots. It's like a little cross that goes in basically, and you can grow 4 plants in these earlier on in the season, and it was fantastic for me. It really gave the plants a boost. There's just something about the Autopot system that my chili plants in particular seem to respond fantastically well to. They just grow like they're on steroids. Like there's something special about it, to be honest. I should say, full disclosure, all of the products on offer today were sent to me. There are some affiliate links in the background, but this is all honest thoughts after years of using them. A lot of it has been bought with my own money as well. I'm currently saving some pennies to buy some more Autopot systems for next year because they're just so fantastic. The main con in terms of the Autopots is the setup time. It can be a little bit more finicky, and like I say, you do need to cut stuff to size. The other thing is, it's a pro and a con, but the plants just get so large and so unruly that they can, you really need to plan ahead, and they can turn into a bit of a jungle. They can start to snap if you don't support them properly, but I don't really think you can blame the Autopot system for growing such fantastic plants that they're starting to snap under their own weight and that sort of thing, you know. Next up, the Quadgrows. Now, this is the first ever self-watering system that I used, so I am slightly emotionally attached to it. I've been using this particular system for 5 years now. I bought it back when it was Greenhouse Sensations. It's changed hands a few times. I think it's Garland that does it now. But you can see the chili plants, not as unruly as the Autopots, a bit more ordered, a bit more structured, but still very healthy, good-sized plants. I'm filming this October of 2024 and it has been a garbage season. I've done pretty much everything right with these chili peppers, but on a better season, these would be a third increased in size, you know, we'd be getting much bigger harvests. But the Quadgrows can still give really, really healthy plants, and I think they work great for chilies. Obviously the ChilliGrow is a specific product meant to be for chilies, and we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of the video. But these do give really, really healthy plants. I have found some difficulties when I've tried to grow tomatoes in them, but I've seen other people do the tomatoes in them, you know, with great success. I've had a lot of blossom end rot, which kind of suggests maybe they're not getting enough water. That's tomatoes though. My chilies have always been really, really good. Another pro for the Quadgrow is the price. So these are much cheaper than Autopots, but they're still pretty pricey. So one of these will run you around £60, and that gives you about 4 pots. The Autopot, I will have put a price on the screen earlier. It really depends with Autopots because you can get so many different options. This is more of a set price, and £60 is still quite a lot of money for 4 plants, but this will last you years and years. One of the cons is that it's not modular in the same way as the Autopot. So if you break a bit of the Quadgrow, there's not a replacement part website. Actually, JB, that is a complete lie. It turns out, I thought I was editing that and I was watching it and I thought maybe I should just double check that information, and I went over to the Greenhouse Sensations website, where it turns out they do now stock all sorts of replacement parts for the Quadgrow, as you can see here. So I do need to correct this point. It's not a negative of the Quadgrow, and they are much more modular now than they used to be. They might have fixed that. I'll put that a note on screen if they have fixed that, but that's always been a bit of a frustration for me. And compared to the modular design of the Autopots, where the tiniest little bit breaks, you just buy a new bit for 3 or 4 quid, and you don't have to spend 60 whole pounds on a new system when only a small part of your existing system might be broken. Another very small minor con for the Autopots is that they rely on this wicking matting, and you have to replace that wicking matting every year, which, like I say, is very minor, but it's just a bit annoying, especially if you've forgotten to buy it and it comes time to plant your plants and you go, I can't do it, you know, because I need to order this tiny little thing that only costs, you know, 4 quid a year or something like that. Just very, very minor, very minor. And lastly, the ChilliGrow. This is just a pared down version of the Quadgrow. Basically, you have one reservoir. It's pretty small compared to the Quadgrows, and you've just got the 3 pots that sit above it. These are about 6-litre pots. The Quadgrows have around a 12-litre pot, and the Autopots, I use a 15-litre pot. This is pretty much the same as the Quadgrows, but what I would say, it's a little bit less user-friendly. You've only got this one small hole to fill up and water in, and it's a little trickier to get into, basically, compared to the Quadgrows, where you've got 2 options of watering and the reservoirs are joined. So you only need to access one of the holes and it waters the whole thing. That's the benefit of the Quadgrows being linked in that way. But it does feel a bit cheaper, a bit less premium than the Quadgrows. The Quadgrows do feel like a nice solid product. And one thing I did want to touch on as well is fertilizer, okay? So one of the really nice things about ChilliGrows and Quadgrows is you get quite an expensive premium fertilizer that you water into the bottom reservoir, and I've used it for years. It's really, really good stuff. To compare, I have with the Autopots been using a different fertilizer, which is their all-in-one solution. And I must say, not really a great big difference between the 2 fertilizers. So there's not much in terms of differences there to talk about. But what I do want to talk about is this is a ChilliGrow. This is specifically a product for growing chilies. And I've grown chilies in all these different systems. The traditional kind of thinking behind chili peppers is that you don't want to overwater them. And that is true. They don't like getting their roots too wet all the time or being waterlogged. But all of these systems kind of boast that they give the plant what it needs. And I think that's kind of true, to be fair, because look at all of my chilies basically this year. I've got some comparisons. So this one is the Ring of Fire. Let's look at the Ring of Fire in here, in the Quadgrow, and in the Autopot, if I can get them out into somewhere that we can look at. Fantastic news. I actually managed to get all of the plants out. So let's take a look, because I've got 4 experiments. These are all the same chili pepper, all sown at the same time, grown pretty much at the same rate, and potted up pretty much at the same time. And the results are very clear. Let's start with this one. These are, by the way, all the Ring of Fire variety, one of my favorite chili peppers of all time. And this is just a no frills, no faff, nothing special about this. This is just a pot with my normal potting mix. Links in the description to my chili growing guide as well, if you want to learn a little bit more about how I grow my chilies and what I recommend. And you can see this plant is not looking fantastic. It's okay, it's not the end of the world. We've got some chilies on here, we've got being ambitious with a little flower, but a bit of yellowing on the leaves, you know, it's not looking that healthy. We are coming towards the end of the season, but it's looking markedly worse than the rest. And this is a 7.5 litre pot. Now compare that with the ChilliGrow alongside it next door. Apologies for the chairs, I've basically had to like prop these up. And you can see this is a much healthier plant. Not much of that yellowing of the leaf, a tiny bit there, much more pods, a bigger harvest on here, and generally it's looking pretty okay. One thing I will say, when I first put everything in the ChilliGrows, they were not happy for a really long time actually. They kind of didn't do much growing, and I wasn't sure if that was the ChilliGrow or down to something else, but they did perk up a little bit later on in the season. It did take them quite a few weeks. Whether or not that was just a dud plant having a little bit of a strop, or if it was the ChilliGrows, I'm not sure. But it is looking really good now actually. And I think maybe a little better than I'd given it credit for. I hadn't quite realised that this is looking as healthy as it is. Lots of nice pods on here. So I'm quite happy with that, you know, that is a decent plant. I think if we'd had a slightly better season, that would be really, really good. But the Quadgrow, I think, does put it to shame somewhat. This is a really, really nice and healthy plant. There's not many red pods on here, but that is because I've been harvesting. Loads of flowers, it's coming into growth again. And back here, one really nice stem. You can see that's loaded with flowers, and this is a much healthier plant. Lovely fresh green growth at the top. And I note the leaves on this one are a little bit bigger as well. You get slightly bigger leaves, slightly bigger pods, and that is normally determined by pot size. So this is a much larger pot than the ChilliGrow. What is worth noting, the ChilliGrow pot is smaller than my acoustic pot. So this is maybe a 6.5, and that is a 7.5. So in theory, that one should be a bit bigger. One of the reasons that this probably hasn't done so well is I've missed a few waterings, and that's kind of the whole point of the self-watering systems. But ChilliGrow, pretty good. Quadgrow, very nice. Autopot, unbelievable. Just stunning. And you can see it's flopped over quite a lot. I've got this normally tied up to the polytunnel, but huge pods on here. Loads and loads of red pods. Very healthy looking plant. They have been attacked a little bit this year by, I think, leafcutter bees, which is kind of interesting, but it is a really, really healthy plant, and it is significantly bigger than the Quadgrow. I'm not sure quite how well it comes across on camera, but I would say it's a similar kind of height if you were to stand those two up next to each other, but this is much bushier. It's got a lot more main stems, and as a result, it will have much, much bigger harvests. So I very deliberately planted 4 Ring of Fire plants in different situations, and this has been the pattern. I did it with a number of different chili varieties, and this is the pattern all throughout. The question is, for me though, how much of that is just down to pot size? The ChilliGrow and my own one is quite a good indication that it's not all about pot size, but I do wonder, if you had a Quadgrow with a 15 litre pot on top, would it be as big as the Autopot one? I don't know. But the second question is, what is best for you? And this is one of the things I really wanted to talk about today. Why does the ChilliGrow exist when the Quadgrow is right there? For me, the ChilliGrow probably isn't going to be that useful. I don't think I personally need a ChilliGrow because I've got a Quadgrow right there. The difference in plant size is, you know, very, very obvious. I will always choose the Quadgrow, but it might not be right for you. You will have noticed, I've shown lots and lots of chili plants today. I've got a chili pepper growing guide. I would make so many hot sauces. I could feed armies for weeks. But I'm not your average allotment grower, I don't think. Anyway, I'm a chili fan. I'm a chili obsessive. I perfect my chili growing. I try and do as much early in the year to get the strongest, healthiest plants possible. So for me, by the time I'm putting stuff into Quadgrows, they're really big, they're really chunky, and I'm pretty confident that I've got the timing right. It's all about timing. That's really the answer to that question. What is right for you is all about timing. How much resource do you put into growing your chilies? When do you start them? You know, I start mine in January. If you're starting yours in April, then if you're putting stuff into a Quadgrow or an Autopot, you might get really, really nice big size plants, but your harvests themselves might be rubbish. You know, we really want to grow fruit and not leaves. And for chili plants, it's all about that timing. If you start a bit later in the season, then by the time you get to kind of September, October, which is for me when I really start doing my main harvest, well, it depends on when your first frost is. November is when it really starts to wind down, and I'm not going to have much ripening happening. But if you're late in the season, then the ChilliGrow is possibly going to be a better option, because what's going to happen is your plant's going to set fruit a bit earlier because it's going to fill out this pot a bit earlier. And when the roots are filled out in this pot, the plant starts to know it's like, okay, we need to start doing our fruiting because we've run out of soil, we've run out of nutrients, we're still getting some from the feed, but that is a real sign for the plant. I need to start putting fruit out now because I can't do much more growing on top, you know, with the leaves. And it's the same for the Quadgrows. And it's just the bigger the pot you have, the longer your season has to be, or the earlier you have to start to get your top growth and then your fruiting. So if you're a little less obsessed with chilies and you don't want to go through all that rigmarole and you just want to plant them in April or May and you still want to get a crop, then the ChilliGrow is probably the better option because you've got a slightly smaller plant pot that is going to be filled out and you're probably going to get a decent harvest. One of the options though is for the Autopot. This does have a 7.5 litre pot option. The question is, do you actually get that much better a plant? In previous seasons where we've had much, much better sunlight, much warmer temperatures, my Autopot plants last year were orders of magnitude larger than anything I've ever grown in a Quadgrow. So I personally think it is about a little bit more than just pot size. And I think it is down a little bit to that Autopot system having something special, something a little bit magical about it. But that's just my opinion. And before I talk about the pros and cons generally of all of these systems, I do just want to mention, you don't need them, okay? If you're attentive, if you're at your allotment every day, every other day, if you're growing in your back garden and you've got time, you can grow amazing plants in just a plant pot with a saucer at the bottom. You know, you don't need these. You can as well, of course, grow in the ground. I have had some very, very poor results. This is my Ring of Fire comparison in the ground, and you can see it's not doing much, and I haven't had a harvest from this. This is all it's grown, so it didn't really work out, but I know lots of people do grow in the ground. It's just something I've never really learned, and I prefer growing in pots for all the added control that you get. So I would definitely recommend these self-watering systems. I think they're just so good. For me, I'm not a very attentive allotment holder. You know, I can very, very easily forget to come up and water, or feel too tired and just not come up and think, oh, I'll deal with it later, and live to regret my choices. So that is why I've invested quite heavily in the self-watering systems. I'm not a great gardener. That's probably why they work out so well for me, and they give me so much peace of mind, and I love them. The main cons for all of these systems, I think, is that they're not as flexible as pots. You know, this is my main frustration. Once you put them in and your plant starts to grow and get some serious heft to it, moving that system around is a nightmare. If you've put something in slightly the wrong place, it's not getting enough light, it's arguing with something else, or there's shelves in the way, or something like that, you're kind of stuck, and it becomes a real mission to move everything. With a pot, you just pick it up and move it. You know, there's no faff, you just pick it up and move it. So that lack of flexibility, you really need to factor into your planning. It takes a little bit of practice getting used to where is the best place for these systems, you know. One other potential drawback with these is I think they can potentially encourage complacency in some people. So because you water maybe once a week, much more infrequently, you don't get as up close and personal with your plants. You don't start to notice the problems that you might do if you're watering every 2 or 3 days, individual plant pots, you know, and because maybe they can encourage a bit of complacency, you don't visit your garden as much, you don't visit the allotment as much. And I think that's just something to be aware of. Just because you've got these systems, it's still worth spending that quality time with your plants. You know, having that nice plant therapy, getting up close and personal, seeing what the issue is. This does not have enough support. You know, this is another example of my not fantastic gardening. In fact, I'm going to put this inside because it looks like it might keel over at any moment. One thing I do love about those Autopots, those pots are robust. You know, that plant is huge. It weighs a ton, but you can just pick it up by the lip and you know it's not going to break. I think the Quadgrows are pretty similar, really nice pots. The ChilliGrows I don't trust quite as much. They feel a bit flimsy. The other main con, and being completely honest, when it comes time for me to take my seedlings from their little pots and put them into this kind of final position in the self-watering pot, I kind of dread it. It's just a lot of faff. You got to faff around getting the wicking matting in the right place for these Quadgrows, and then you got to feed it into the pot. It's not the end of the world, but I do just find myself a little bit like reticent to actually do it. And the same is true of the Autopots. You've got to get the base system working properly. You've got to make sure that it's all wicking properly and all the materials pushed in. And then it's just a lot more complicated than planting up into a normal plant pot, but definitely worth it. Do not get me wrong. I love the end results and the peace of mind. It's a little bit more work up front for so much less work over the course of your growing season. And I think the pros speak for themselves. You know, you can really maximize how much harvest you're going to get from a relatively small space. The peace of mind is fantastic. The lack of maintenance is like a dream come true for someone like me who's a little bit inattentive and a little bit busy. I do love all these systems. If you're interested, there is a discount code in the description for Autopots. I really do strongly recommend them, and like I say, I'm going to be expanding my system with my own pennies this year. For the rest of the systems, I recommend checking out Grown Local because they have amazing customer service. If you have any problems, they will sort you out. Thank you ever so much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you again next time. An extra special thank you to all of my Chilli Pepper tier patrons: Tony, Bill, Pam, Mel, Michael, Socks, Angela, Dorcasaur, Louise, Andre, and Brett. I've still got to learn it. I apologize. Hopefully I'll see you again in the next one.